are several trends that are dominating the current cinematic landscape, with reboots and sequels being high on that list. Why go for an original new idea when you can ride the coattails of something that has already proven to be successful, right? For all the skepticism and stigma attached to such films, with many of them met with groans and sighs, sequels themselves aren't inherently a bad thing, as long as there's a story to tell and a reason to tell it beyond a shallow cash grab, of course. There are movies like this that audiences are waiting for, whether eagerly or not, and have been for some time. Then there are those that have garnered excitement immediately, having only just been announced within the last few weeks and months. I'm Ellie for Whatculture, and let's take a look at these huge movie sequels just announced. Starting with The Mitchells vs. the Machines 2. Over the years, the catalogue of Sony animation has been something of a hit and miss lottery. The lows have been Emoji Movie levels of low, while brighter spots have included the likes of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Arthur Christmas, and the Hotel Transylvania series. In particular, over recent years, there have been some truly smash hits, namely the Spider-Verse films, most recently K-pop Demon Hunters, and The Mitchells vs. the Machines in 2021. The latter, after being nominated for Best Animated Feature at the Oscars, now has a sequel to look forward to. It wasn't just the eye-catchingly beautiful animation style that helped the movie to stand out. It was a fun story powered by a stacked and talented cast, including the Mitchell family played by Abby Jacobson, Danny McBride, Maya Rudolph, and Mike Rianda, who at least can be expected to return, hopefully, as well as the likes of Olivia Colman. Set to be written by the Molyneux sisters and directed by Guillermo Martinez and JP Sands, there is no word on when the sequel will release just yet. However, if other recent animated hits are anything to go by, it could be a while. With the time and effort needed to perfect such wonderful animation, this is a small price to pay. A Quiet Place Part 3. In 2018, John Krasinski went completely against the type of projects that made him famous when he wrote, starred in, and directed A Quiet Place. However, the film was a huge hit. The world saw Krasinski in a different light, and one of the most successful horror franchises in recent memory was born. Now, 7 years later, Krasinski took to social media to announce the trilogy making A Quiet Place Part 3. Originally set to release on the 9th of July 2027, the outing has already been delayed by 3 weeks to avoid another film that I'll get to later on this list. It will be interesting to see where the third in the trilogy and the fourth Quiet Place movie overall will go. Arguably, the original movie was a self-contained story that needed no sequels or spin-offs, but still earned itself one of each. A Quiet Place Part 2 continued the story of the Abbotts in what felt closer to an epilogue than a story of its own, while Day 1 has gone back to that first day and told the story of Samira and Eric in New York. Is there really anywhere else for the story to go? Though the prospect of Emily Blunt, Millicent Simmons, Noah Jupe, and of course Cillian Murphy potentially returning is exciting, it's hard to see where things can go that won't be retreading old steps. Gremlins 3. Iconic 80s movies will always have that golden glow of nostalgia that seemingly pulls studios towards the idea of remakes and reboots. It was reported in early 2025 that a long-awaited Goonies sequel would be going into production, but this is far from the only one. More recently, it has been announced that Amblin Entertainment and thus Steven Spielberg will also be involved in an upcoming Gremlins 3. The original film came out in 1984 with a follow-up 6 years later, and now a trilogy will be completed in 2027 after a wait of almost 4 more decades. Of course, at this stage, details are limited at best, though aside from Spielberg, there are some names confirmed to be attached. The film will be written by Final Destination Bloodlines directors Zach Lipovsky and Adam B. Stein, and quite excitingly, will be directed by Chris Columbus, who wrote the original and is coming off the back of working with Amblin for Netflix's Thursday Murder Club adaptation. Coming so long after Gremlins 2: The New Batch, it's impossible to tell which, if any, original cast members will return, or if a whole new generation of characters will be subjected to the mischief of the titular creatures. But it's fair to say it could be either, with a decent chance of it being a little bit of both. Screamboat 2: Nothing Stays Dead. All it takes is one movie and one idea to kickstart a new trend that can take over a whole genre of film. And this is what happened when Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey took a beloved children's character recently entered into the public domain and threw them into a gory horror flick. Since then, Blood and Honey has seen a sequel and kicked off the Twisted Childhood universe, which has and will include other gruesome stories around the likes of Peter Pan, Bambi, and of course with an Avengers-style crossover to boot. Outside of the TCU, there has been Screamboat, a similar take on Mickey Mouse's Steamboat Willie, which has also entered the public domain. Willie, played by the same man who has brought to life Art the Clown in the Terrifier franchise, David Howard Thornton, will return in Screamboat 2 Nothing Stays Dead. Alongside Mickey Mouse's iconic character will be Minnie Mouse, as the first movie's cliffhanger will seemingly be paid off. There is clearly a real market for these kinds of adaptations, so don't rule out a trilogy in the near future, particularly with more Mickey Mouse stories, including Pluto's first appearance, set to hit the public domain next year. The Mummy 4. There are some movie franchises that have seemed so dead in the water for so long that all hope of ever seeing them return is all but gone, often for decades at this point. However, the movie industry has proven nothing to be true quite so much as you should never say never. Even with the re-emergence of Brendan Fraser as a star in Hollywood, no one would have had a fourth Mummy movie announcement on their 2025 bingo card. And yet here we are! Set to be directed by the team behind 2022's Scream revival, Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette, Fraser will return to the role of Rick O'Connell after over 2 decades. All in all, a hugely exciting update, though arguably the biggest news comes in the form of Rachel Weisz's involvement. She appeared in both The Mummy and The Mummy Returns, but famously skipped the threequel The Mummy Tomb of the Dragon Emperor and was replaced by Maria Bello. Her return is a welcome one, and that goes for the franchise as a whole, particularly after the unmitigated failure that was Universal's Mummy reboot attempt in 2017 with Tom Cruise at the helm. Fraser himself knows that fun is one of the key ingredients to this film and this franchise, and so hopefully audiences will be in for a real treat. Godzilla Minus Zero. It would typically be unthinkable for a film released almost 70 years after the original to be considered one of the best in the franchise, if not the very best. But that is exactly what Godzilla Minus One achieved in 2023. Everything about it was excellent, from Godzilla itself to the human element that often falls by the wayside in such monster movies. The action, the score, the story, and the Academy Award-winning visual effects. It had everything, even including a delicious tease that the King of the Monsters wasn't actually killed in the final moments. Godzilla's healing ability clearly showed that it had more to offer, and thankfully, that is now confirmed with the announcement of Godzilla Minus Zero, also to be helmed by the returning Takashi Yamazaki in the director's chair. After such success on a reportedly small budget of $15 million, it's likely that this figure will go way up for the sequel after a huge $113 million global box office intake. Whether or not the cast will be returning, which is entirely possible as their mission to lose no lives to Godzilla was successful, this potential bump in budget may lead to another kaiju or two stepping into the ring. I mean, who isn't ready to see Mothra or King Ghidorah set foot, wing, or triple head into this universe? The Super Mario Galaxy movie. Though there were moans and groans at the first released footage of the Super Mario Bros. Movie, not least thanks to the Brooklyn drawl given to the main character by Chris Pratt, the film went on to be mind-bogglingly successful. It crossed the $1 billion mark with ease, and a sequel was a no-brainer. Back in 2024, it was announced that there would be another Super Mario movie coming, though technically there was no confirmation of this being a sequel until now. With a backlog of games and other media stretching back to 1981 to pull inspiration from, Nintendo is sending Mario & Co. to space in 2026. The Super Mario Galaxy movie will adapt the Wii game from 2007, though how loosely or faithfully remains to be seen. It could be that the only thing the film has in common with the game is the outer space setting. And then, of course, there is the question of how exactly the original's post-credit scene of Yoshi will be paid off. With a surprisingly close release date of April 2026, it is somewhat comforting that Keegan-Michael Key, who will be reprising his role as Toad, alongside Chris Pratt, Anya Taylor-Joy, Charlie Day, and Jack Black, have already finished The Simpsons movie 2. These days, a wait of 20 years for a sequel is far from unheard of, and it isn't even close to some of the gaps other franchises have seen between films. Even so, the confirmation of a second Simpsons movie is something that nobody could have predicted. Way back in 2007, Fox brought Springfield's favourite family to the big screen, and it was a wild success. So constant was the demand for a sequel that Futurama even made a joke about it, where Matt Groening shot Bender when he asked about it at an intergalactic Comic-Con. Yet here we are! The Simpsons may not have been good for a long time now. In fact, it was well past its prime when the first film released. But that doesn't mean fans of the show and mainstream audiences won't get excited. The first movie was far better than the weekly episodes the series was putting out at the time, as it released between seasons 18 and 19, so why shouldn't the second also be solid? Though it won't be the official end of The Simpsons, as its season 40 renewal will take it past 2027, it's hard not to imagine Disney choosing now to provide a sequel because it is their last chance. And for those with no interest in watching the show on a regular basis anymore, this will likely be a final goodbye. And finally, Man of Tomorrow. Particularly when you consider the mess that he inherited, James Gunn has made a strong start for his flawed but fun new DCU. Creature Commandos was fine, and Peacemaker has been a huge hit, though the second season couldn't quite live up to the first. But the crown jewel is of course Superman. Introducing a new Clark Kent, particularly so soon after Henry Cavill's return was teased and ultimately killed, was never going to be easy. However, Gunn managed to produce one of the best Superman films of all time, with the inspired casting of both Kal-El and Lex Luthor certainly helping. Of course, then, the excitement at the freshly announced sequel, Man of Tomorrow, is understandable, as it will not only see both David Corenswet and Nicholas Hoult return, but will also force them to team up in what promises to be a fun, dynamic, and dynamite continuation of Soup's story. The DCU is really starting to pick up the pace now, with Supergirl, Clayface, and the Lanterns series all set to release before Man of Tomorrow hits cinemas in what is an already stacked 2027 slate.